All right, welcome to 801 Labs, everyone. We're super glad to have you. We're more glad to have Marv. Before we start, I'm really excited because I like keyboards, not as much as some people, but I do think they're really cool, and I'm really excited to look at these. But we're going to talk a little bit about the nonprofit real quick, just reminding you all that we are donation driven. So we would like you to, if you can, pay us money so we can pay rent. We currently only have 7 people signed up on monthly donations, which is way, way less than we have in this room and way, way less than we've had in the past. So if we keep doing that, we'll run out of money pretty quick.
How are you doing the monthly donation?
So we do it, you go to every.org/801labs. And so that's how we do it, is that way.
Should I update to that?
Yes.
Or is my old payment going through fine?
It is still going through just fine through the old system. But we like it that way because it's easier to track. So, and other reasons we can get into it later. But so there's that. More importantly, we're really excited for the class that Marv's teaching. I don't know what to call it, Keyboard Mania.
How to lose money and alienate friends.
Cool. And make probably a few too, right? All right, I'll turn it over to Marv and let him just go for it. I'm really excited.
So I don't really have an agenda. I didn't even bring a computer to have slides or anything like that. So this is going to be a very interactive discussion, and I desire questions and be happy to give you my opinions. A couple of ground rules. You do not touch these 2 keyboards without my permission. I will hurt you. There's several $100s worth of keycaps with 3 caps on those boards. So if I know you, you can ask. If I don't, you have to prove yourself. Second, everything else, feel free to try out, see what you like. The one thing I do ask is sanitize and take a wipe when you're done and wipe the boards as you go along. Just let's keep everyone healthy and safe. They're dusty as hell. My daily driver is on this smorgasbord of plastic and PCBs. So go over just a couple of the background things that you're going to want to know, just terminology. In the mechanical world, it's very hyper subjective. Everyone's opinions are their own. I will jokingly tell you you're wrong, but really when it comes down to it, it's what you actually like. And to that point, these 5 boards that I have right here are as close to identical as I can get. The one difference being I'm using different switch types in each 5 boards. So I would like people to sit and try them all out, like you're actually typing, just kind of see what it is. And basically the goal here is for you to learn what it is that you like in a mechanical board. And at the end, I will tell you what they are, not going to tell you ahead of time. But it can be how it sounds, it can be how it feels, whatever. Just ignore the aesthetics. Like I said, I threw whatever caps I could get to fit on this. The layout is not particularly standard. That's one of the things we'll go over is layouts. But this is kind of a research project for me, an informal, highly scientific with a sample group of what, 20? Just look at people's actual feelings when they're using keyboards, because what it comes down to, the most divisive part about the custom mechanical keyboard world is your preference of switch. And on switches, there are 3 main types of mechanical switches, and for the most part, what I'm talking about are the Cherry MX style switches. Cherry's patent expired several years ago, and it allowed people to come in and make clones. And frankly, I will say, I will die on this hill, the clones are better. Not all the way across, but more care has been taken into some of the clones that are out there, regardless of what switch type you like. And I think that they're, I'll say objectively better. I think they're better quality. But
what are some of the more trusted clones that are better quality? I mean, again, super subjective, right?
Kale or Kylie, if you take some random person on Twitter's word that's how it's pronounced. It's Kailh. Is the U.S. brand of a company called Kaiwa out of China. They're one of my favorites. JTK, Gateron. You'll see a lot of Gateron. You'll actually see Gateron in commercial boards. There's a lot of pre-built boards that are coming with Gateron switches.
Keycron does Gateron.
Some of them. Keycron also has their own stuff too. And Keycron is a pre-built. I don't have any personal experience with it. The people that I know that like it a lot. They are a very well thought after brand in the industry. A lot of people like Cherry. There is one Cherry switch type that I do like. That's the Cherry Clear. I think Cherry Reds, Browns, and Blues all need to die in a fire. This is totally subjective. This is what I feel. For the most part, most of my boards are going to have either Yock, Kale, Franken switches, stuff that I built by taking two different switches apart, taking the stems and springs out of one, putting them in the housing of another, lubing them. We'll go into all that too. So the three main switch types, not brands. Yeah.
What are switches?
It's a good question.
The switch. It's the mechanical electrical connection. This is what makes a mechanical keyboard. Mechanical keyboard is you've got a little switch that the keycap goes onto, soldered into or hot swap into a PCB, or hand wired. I have hand wired boards too. They're a pain in the ass.
What are the switches usually made out of? Are they made out of different things?
Different types of plastics. There's not a lot of uniformity. That's one of the things with like the clones that are out there. There are a lot of switch options. Different plastics, POM, ABS. I don't even know them all because I don't really care that much.
Typically plastic though.
Yeah. The internals of the switch, there will be a metal spring to be the spring. Those can be different weights. That's one thing that you'll find is that people have a very particular, they want a very light switch or they want a heavy switch. There's also a linear switch, which is there's no feedback from the top of the keystroke all the way to the bottom. It's one constant spring rate. There is a clicky switch. That's your old school Cherry MX Blues. It's probably the most well-known clicky switch. Or going back to like the buckling spring for IBM Model F. That's a clicky switch, not to be clicky, but it's physically how it functions is when the keycap is pressed down, a spring buckles and touches the side of that to make an electrical contact. This, in all these switches, there's a leaf. And there's on the stem, there's a little ramp that presses the leaf in and makes the electrical contact. And then there's a tactile switch, and a tactile switch will have a bump in the travel that you can feel, and that bump sometimes can be tuned a little bit to be at the actuation point of when the switch closes and makes a contact, or it can be before or after. And again, this is all the subjectivity of what switches you like. That can very much change your opinion on a switch, is that it actuates too soon or too late, or it's just right, the baby bear, mom bear thing. So really it's highly subjective. Now, of everything I brought one arguably non-mechanical keyboard. It's, holy hell, I miss you. Good seeing you, buddy. I've known this guy for 27 years. No, longer.
I wasn't going to miss an opportunity to push all your buttons.
Is it the flat one that's the non-mechanical?
Nope. So this board right here, the Real Force, is uses Topper switches. Fix that.
Yeah.
Which are technically rubber dome, which will be similar to like the shitty Dell keyboards that you'll see. However, it uses a mechanical slider, and so it's kind of I love the tactility of it. It's actually it's probably my favorite key feel. I don't use it as much because I don't like the way it sounds as much. Also, it's way too big. As you can see, I tend to prefer compact keyboard styles. I'm right, you're wrong, Tim. If I need a 10 key, guess what? I build those too. I just didn't bring any.
One of those that you built for me, or at least your project.
Could never have enough 10 key.
Or you can learn how to type with that one, or you can throw it on a layer. So
that's true.
Some other terminology you'll hear about keycap profiles. So the shape of the keycaps will vary depending on manufacturer and style. I've got a fair selection. Most of them are going to be what they call OEM or cherry profile, but I have some SA, I have some DSA. If you want to go down the rabbit hole of profiles, we'll later on when you're playing around with them, we can do that. I've got about 4 or 5 different profiles here. But it's just the shape of the keycap.
So you mean like those ones over there are kind of rounded and cupped?
Yeah, those
and
are sculpted.
These ones are pretty flat.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll hear sculpted, spherical, and that's, again, a matter of preference. How a board sounds is somewhat impacted by the keycap profile.
I don't want to sit that close to Marv.
Shouse? What
Yes.
the hell? People from my past are coming out of the woodwork tonight. Took me a second.
How you doing?
It's been a
They
minute.
heard you were going to come and they were excited.
One thing I have here that I think is of marginal use, this is a switch tester. So this has 63 or 68 or something like that, different switch types on it. You can play around with it and you can say, okay, I like the way it feels, I don't like the way it feels, I like the way it sounds, I don't like the way it sounds. I'll say this is more useless than not because this isn't a keyboard. You're not getting the full feel of like your whole hand, how you're using it in a real thing. And again, that's what these 5 are for. I definitely want everybody to go through those and to tell me which one you like the most. And at the end of all this, I will explain the differences between them and why you like them more or less. They are as close to the identical boards as I can get. It's the same case, same PCB. There's a silicone deadening mat inside of it, 5 different switch types, and then caps to throw on it that I just had lying around. Now, supplies that I have at home, I'm sitting on about 3,000 or 4,000 switches. I've probably got 10 unused keycap sets of various types. A lot that are used, obviously. I've built over 50 keyboards. I built every one of these except 2. That one because that's the commercial board, the Topper board, and I bought that one from a friend, the blue and white, small, low-profile one. Additional terminology, case types. You'll hear different mounting types, sandwich mount, tray mount, gasket mount. I have examples of all of those here. I think I've got 2 gasket mount, a bunch of plate mount or sandwich types. Different case materials. Some are just PCB. Some are laser cut acrylic. Others are milled aluminum, injection molded plastic, milled polycarbonate. I don't think I brought any of those. You can get real stupid and have a case with a giant weight on the bottom. This does absolutely nothing except makes it heavier and look cool.
It doesn't like make it so it won't slide or anything?
That's a 3-kilo keyboard. Sliding's not a problem.
Well, I mean, that's what the weight is for, right?
No.
Oh.
It's
that without
it's
the weight?
e-peen points, nothing more.
Okay.
I have a friend that's got a 12-pound keyboard that he's super proud of. Like
12 pounds.
people go crazy. In some of these boards, I've actually put Dynamat, the same stuff that you put in your car to deaden sound. Some of them I don't. It's kind of the whole gamut of, I've tried to bring a sampling of everything. And then there's also layout. So everybody's familiar with the staggered column layout. There's the standard like Windows 104 keyboard. A lot of these will have a staggered layout, but in a smaller form factor because that's my personal preference. Some are ortholinear, which the keys are laid out in a grid pattern. That's actually probably the most comfortable for me to type on, is split ortholinear. So they're like the two halves are this far apart and they're ortho.
So that one?
That one.
Okay.
Do I tap on that every day? No. Because I swap keyboards out all the time. I usually have between 3 and 5 on my desk at any given time. It's as bad as you and pocket knives, but
Yeah, you're worse maybe. I don't know.
Probably spent more.
Are the knobs super common?
That's a more recent thing where there will be a rotary encoder and a knob, so you can set that up to be volume or whatever you want. Really, that's a good segue into software. So the firmware that's running on most, not all of these keyboards, is called QMK. That's a open source framework that is for little tiny microcontrollers to run keyboards. You can set your key map to be whatever you want. If it can happen with key presses, you can do it. Mike probably knows more about it than I do because I don't like programming. Yeah.
Do you have any at home that has like the ThinkPad knob? Like the red dot in the center that acts as a
No. Except my ThinkPad.
Ah, okay. I've been looking to put one of those on anything.
Some people do. The firmware that's available for that does not yet support that well. QMK doesn't really have the support for that built in yet. That's something that's in flight. They're absolutely working on it.
That would be interesting to add a little knob to your keyboard. I mean, you wouldn't use it very often, but when you do.
So that keyboard is on my gaming PC most of the time, and I do use it just for volume. And and I don't use that. That's not the keyboard I'm typing on. It's the other keyboard on my desk that I mostly use for the volume knob because the volume control for my speakers is further away than the keyboard.
That makes me want to build one that'll like change my mic volume and then
you
like
absolutely
have
can
4
do
or 5 knobs for different things. That'd be pretty sweet.
And you can do you can create macro pads out of it. The little tiny one with the pink and blue switches on the top of it there. Some people will actually type on it. That's what's called a 30% board. I think that is pure pain.
Which one?
The one without keycaps, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. People type on it.
Does that have enough buttons?
Yeah, layers.
Okay.
So what's meant by a layer? Everybody's used to using shift to have capitals and symbols and stuff like that. You can use other keys to be a layer that's another meta key that does something similar. So I could do a raise and J, and that's a dash. And on the little 40% boards that don't have a number row, that's how I do that. I have gotten used to it. I'll say that it probably took me a solid week of typing on an ortholinear to get used to the non-staggered layout. And then once I did that, I'm like, okay, I get it. I like it. This is comfortable for me. And then it probably took me another week to go from a 60% ortholinear to a 40% ortholinear. And basically, you just lose the number row for a 40%. And so it's raise Q is 1, raise W is 2, etc. And lower Q is bang, and lower W is at.
Like function.
Yeah, it's a meta key. It changes what the key does. And you can set the layers to do whatever you want. And so for all of you dilettantes that don't think you can live without a numpad, all you do is you throw it on a layer.
But unless you're weird like us and we like the stagger keys, but your numpad is ortholinear, right, or square. Is it called ortholinear?
Not for a numpad, but that's effectively ortholinear.
Because it's just a different shape and then the muscle.
Learn better.
I'll just spend the money and have a keypad too.
I've been typing for twice as long as you've been alive, and I got to figure this stuff out. As an old dude, I figured it out. You can figure it out. It's not that bad.
That's true.
Can you do like corded input?
Sorry?
Can you do like corded input?
There are absolutely there are
Like
chords.
Yeah, cause
Like for steno does chords. I don't. You can also do tap dance, where does 3 different things for the switch.
Yeah. But I was asking that because I'm a Braille user sometimes, and Braille keyboards are all corded.
Yeah. QMK absolutely supports it. Do I know anything about it? Nope.
My favorite part about QMK is all the macros that you can get in there. Like, there's so many that you can come up with. They're just way useful.
I've got macro pads set up. My favorite macro pad kicks one of the board members here out of IRC. Another one kicks another member out of IRC. Another one clicks whoever I have highlighted out of IRC. That's the top 3 switch keys on that particular macro pad.
Would you say most have like software to program them like that? Like the one I have, it doesn't have like you can program the keys without.
All of
like,
these
software.
except that do. The real force I only brought in to give people the opportunity to try the Topper switches because I think it's a very unique feel for your fingers and hands, and one that I particularly enjoy, and so that's why that's the outlier here. Everything else is running either QMK or VIA. VIA is a fork of QMK that has a graphical configurator and is a little friendlier, to be honest. I know some people have strong opinions there too, and there are opinions in the keyboard world. With that said,
If you're spending over $100 on a keyboard, you're an opinionated person.
He spent way more than that. trust
No,
me.
I know.
I'm doing math in my head, and my initial estimate of over 1,000 was off by a lot. It's
No.
just so the cheapest board on this table is the little 30% guy over there that I had caps on, and I took it off because I wanted them for something else. And that kit is available from a local guy, keyhive.xyz. I'm going to pimp a few vendors that I do support, but keyhive.xyz is run by a guy down in, I think he moved. He was in PG. I think he's in Orem now.
You showed that one on your YouTube video, right? That you did?
Probably.
Yeah, I think you did.
I don't remember.
Every time he talks
That was
about keyboards,
3
he
weeks
talks
ago.
about this guy.
I
good.
I support him because he's a friend. He's local. He's
You don't get many local people doing this.
more than you think.
Building kits and selling them?
Mm-hmm. More than you think. But he's the one that I'm going to mostly talk about, and also the other people that are designing stuff are usually going through him for local group buys and
Can you
whatnot.
spell it again?
Keyhive.xyz.
Already done.
Oh, cool.
Apparently it's in the Discord. Some of the other bigger vendors out there that you'll hear a lot of, I use Keeb.io for a lot of the like ortholinear kits that I have. I think my Nyquist, which is the split 60% there with the cable, that is Keeb.io. Drop is a very touchy one for me because I hate them. They're sometimes the only game in town for some stuff. They have an exclusive distributorship for some of the switches that I really like. And I like them because I take the part that's the Franken switch thing where I take two switches apart and use parts from one and another. They're a part of that. Novel Keys, novelkeys.com. They're great. Mike, the guy that runs that, super supportive of the hobby. And I have one of the boards that he's got, the NK65, that's actually my daily driver for work. Lots of keycap sets, desk mats, switches, boards. You can do a lot if you have a 3D printer. You don't need to have a PCB to have one of these keyboards. You can hand wire it. That is well out of the scope of anything I'm going to go through tonight. If you missed the hand wiring class that I arranged a few years ago, that's on you. But if you have a microcontroller and a soldering iron, you can hand wire a keyboard and use nothing but 3D printed parts, switches, and caps. You can 3D print caps too. Not great.
The switches?
No.
No.
Like maybe like
No.
the plastic.
A
part
big
and
one, maybe.
Get the
No.
like,
Now
Get the
you make me
spray
want to
resin.
figure it out.
Resin?
Resin printer?
But yeah.
Resin.
no,
Now,
scissors.
would I ever? No. That is way more effort than it's worth. But you absolutely can 3D print keycaps. I've done resin caps. You can do them on an FDM printer. You don't have to have a resin printer.
Yeah, Mike did it for the his bat or the
The DEF CON badge.
the Def badge.
Yeah, guess who prototyped them for him?
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
So
Ask Mike if he'd ever print that many keycaps again.
Hard pass.
he was sneaky about it too. He didn't tell me it was for the DEF CON badge.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Just said, hey, try these out.
No, he was asking me about them, like sourcing them, because he's having a hard time sourcing the caps, and that's particularly see-through caps like that are insanely hard to source and very expensive when you can get them to have a re-legendable cap like that. What else? There's
Do you have like mechanical? Any like, or not mechanical? Sorry, ergo. They're kind of like the split, but then they're also
I
like
brought one
curved as well.
like a
I don't know what you call those.
Manuform Dactyl is one of those.
Yeah.
What's it? Can't remember the name of the Kinesis. Kinesis makes the Kinesis Advantage that has a very like super dished thing. I hate them personally. Can't
always
type
want
on
to try
them.
one, but I don't have like
I also
money to do it.
absolutely can't stand thumb clusters. Me as a typist, that space bar, that might as well not exist. Like I don't. Except if I was on a 10 key, which I very, very, very rarely use anymore. But I can't do the thumb clusters that you see on a lot of ergo boards. I brought one that doesn't have a huge thumb cluster, which is why I got it, and I need to desolder the microcontrollers and unfuck those because, well, that's a thing that happens. Yes, I know that's not on there very well.
Oh no, it's actually you can press it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the rotary encoders you can twist them in
And press.
and press.
What are your thoughts on resin keys, like the poured resin? Kind of
Why don't you tell us about these? We've had a lot of people
All
ask
right,
about them.
so Artisan keycaps. Let's talk about those for a minute.
Please.
Here, let's
So
just.
I would make them.
So an Artisan keycap. They're very hard to make. The Artisan keycaps that I have with me are actually made by a local guy that you'll never meet because he's a hermit. But their Keyforge is the brand, and they're basically sold on a raffle basis. He makes 4 or 5 of every colorway, and that's it. He never makes more. And retail, they're $80 That's what he gets for them.
I mean, he has
Secondary market is where this gets insane. I have one cap on there that I paid $285 for.
Wait.
Which one?
The Shishi that especially matches the Lisa Plank. This is my second most expensive keyboard. It's one of my smallest keyboards. It's one of the first boards that I built. I don't love the switches. If I were to redo it, I keep on thinking about desoldering them and rebuilding it, but it has vintage Lisa Frank stickers on it, and then the two resin Artisan caps. This is why you're not allowed to touch this board. I bought on the secondary market. They're very expensive, way more than I ever should have. But I got it for the theme.
So it's worth to make.
It's not, but it's worth to make them. They are very difficult to make.
Well,
I don't want to dissuade you from doing this.
I've been playing with the idea of it, but I wanted just like somebody who was really into keyboards' opinion of.
It's another very divisive topic in the community. Some people hate them, some people love them. A lot of people collect them. I know a guy up in Ogden who's got hundreds of them.
Sweet.
If he were to sell them on the secondary market, he'd pay off his house. I'm not joking. The keyboard market is weird. A lot of the stuff that you'll see out there, you can only get in a group buy, which is the absolute second worst way to buy a keyboard. How a group buy works is whoever's running the group buy gives the window of time, and they'll have either a certain number of boards or they'll open it up or as many as they sell, and then you pay for something, and then you wait.
Long time.
This is the only board that I bought on a traditional group buy here that took me almost a year to get, and that one wasn't off by a long shot. A lot of the keycaps are sold the same way. If you want a particular colorway, like this is Miami Nights is the name of the colorway. If you want to see it for Discord. And this was done by Signature Plastics, also known as Pimp My Keyboard, out of Seattle, I want to say. I think they're in Washington. And it's the Signature Plastics or Pimp My Keyboard SA profile, which is the size profile of these in Miami Nights. A lot of keycaps you can only get during a group buy. If you're lucky, they'll do multiple rounds of the group buy depending on how popular they are. It is another extremely divisive topic in the hobby are clones. Someone runs a particular colorway and then never runs it again, but people like it. Eventually someone's like, it's just plastic. They go to a manufacturer and run something similar. You will start fights online if you have an opinion one way or another on that. I will leave that to you to decide. Costs. Let's go into what it costs to build a board. If you get a kit like this, this is a wireless only, so it's Bluetooth or it has a little dongle.
Oh, it has batteries in it.
It has batteries. This board for the case, the PCB, and the dongle and all that was $20. Sounds like a great deal, right?
Yeah.
Tell your 30 cents to $1 per switch for the switches. Sometimes you can get them like really cheap switches down 17 cents. Those are usually pretty shitty switches. And then keycaps. Sky's the limit. A lot of these are just like Amazon special, which is why they don't fit 100% well. I just did the best I could because I got $15 keycaps for this. But again, these 5 are my project of what do you actually like, and then I'll tell you what they are. Switches. Off-brand from Taiwan or from China, no-name stuff. You're going to be, call it 20 cents a switch. And if you have somebody lube your switches for you, and yes, this is a thing that you do, that can be 50 cents a switch to have somebody lube it for you. What's the time to do it yourself? If you have the tools and the willingness to do it, it takes me about 4 hours to do 100 switches.
Oh, so they're making like what, $12 an hour doing that?
Takes me that long. I'm not that good at it.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes I'll sit and do that while watching TV or whatever. And so that's what I brought these for. Do not pay for Krytox. Krytox is the meme lube that exists out there that everyone uses. It has to be Krytox 205G whatever. And no, it doesn't. That lubricant is specifically designed to have chemical properties to stand up for very specific environments and whatnot. Dielectric grease and a little bit of oil to make the viscosity you want, you're done. These two bottles cost me less than $30 for both of them, and this is a lifetime supply of keyboard lube. I mix it myself in a jar that came with some of the other tools. And anyone that's interested, I'll show these tools kind of one off. They're hard to explain until you show them, but this is a way overpriced switch cracker. You don't need to pay for one of these. It makes it slightly easier, but here's the dirty secret about if you have cherry switches or cherry style switches that you crack open. Once you have one open, you have the perfect tool to crack open more because you use the legs from one to open the other. You don't need to spend $30 on this. I make poor financial decisions.
Who would have thought?
Look, I don't come after you and your hobbies.
I've made plenty of my own poor decisions. And who says it's poor if it's something you like a lot?
Yeah.
So regarding tools, is Keycap Polar beneficial?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you don't want to break the stem of the keycap when you're pulling it off, if there have been runs of switches that were slightly out of spec, that you could split the internal of the stem fairly easily. If you have a keycap puller, it's a very consistent removal. If you have Alps switches, which are very old, they're not made anymore. There's a company bought the tooling, Matthias, and makes modern Alps switches. They're effectively the same, but they're kind of a clone. Again, semantics. People have opinions on that. If you do not use a cap puller, you are going to break the stem inside of the switch, making the cap and the switch useless. Ask me how I know.
How many did you break?
Way too many.
I'm sorry. Considering they're not made anymore.
And as far as what I brought here, some of the more interesting things. This isn't a keyboard. This is a Raspberry Pi.
Oh, nice.
This is the Pi 400. You could buy this. It had a little membrane keyboard. The guy that runs 40% Club, I think it was 40% Club, he came up with a PCB that you could put mechanical switches in, and you are
cool.
tearing this apart. This not. I avoid warranties for a living, right? You do permanent damage to the case, but you can have mechanical keyboard on a Raspberry Pi, and it's totally integral. And I didn't even bother hooking up the rotary encoder because that was more soldering that I didn't want to do.
And it's just for looks anyways, right?
On that one, I mean, I don't...
It's just cool to have.
I don't use the Raspberry Pi for anything, but... and then the one that's in front of that all the way, if you look at that, yeah, the one in front, want to hand that to me?
Yeah.
So, if you're at all familiar with the Arduino Pro microcontroller, which is used in a bunch of stuff, you can do it with surface mount components. This is physically identical, or electrically identical to a Pro Micro with an old pin in socket IC, and then you put the capacitors and you put the resistors and everything on it. This is the Pro Micro, and then all of these are the diodes for the switches.
It's a really pretty one.
Yeah, this is called the Plaid. This is another kit that is often available on Keyhive. It's a fun little build. I think I've got 3 or 4 of these unbuilt at home.
Are they expensive?
No, they're pretty cheap.
Maybe good Christmas gift.
I haven't looked up the price on them for a while, but I want to say under $30 for all.
For the kit, not
for
the
kit.
switches or the.
Not the switches and keycaps.
Yeah.
Switches and keycaps are the dirty secret to why this is a stupid expensive hobby that no one should get into.
Should we do our own kit?
That'd be cool.
I mean, we know how to
Go
do.
for
We
it.
know how to do PCBs, and we can do acrylic and stuff.
Selling them is another thing.
Oh, I meant just for us.
So we do a group buy.
Do like just do it as one of the projects.
There are a lot of
The
open
space.
source kits out there.
That'd be fun.
The really super low profile one with the white caps on there is called a Helix. It's out of Japan. I had to drastically modify the key map to be usable for me because
You don't speak Japanese.
what's the katakana?
Hiragana, katakana,
I
archive.
think it has katakana as its default layout.
Katakana is for the
Don't care.
other languages.
Yeah, it's for loanwords and almost exclusively loanwords.
I can't type on it. Is what it comes down to.
Okay.
And yes, I know that I've got legends on these that are. Some have Japanese legends. I don't know if I have any of mine with Korean legends. I do have some with Korean legends too.
Is that just because you can't get them without, or?
I liked the way they looked.
Okay, cool.
Aesthetic.
This is it's 80% aesthetics,
Yeah.
and Nimitz class FOMO because I need this thing and I can't live without it, and
They only do it once,
Yeah.
and then when people try to clone, they get in trouble. And
yeah, like this board, they're never making any more of it. This is the Polaris. The guy who designed this now works for a competitor of the company that sold this, so this is never going to be, we'll never see the light of day again. You're not going to see this exact board except on the secondary market. And I think I paid $250 or $280, somewhere in there, for the kit, which came with the aluminum case, the brass weight, the brass plate the switches go into before they go into the PCB, just aligns them. You'll notice some of these, the alignment's not real great. There's a reason for that. It's kind of hard to solder 80 switches from behind when they're loose. So if you don't have a good plate, that's what happens. This also has matting between, it's like foam between the plate and the PCB.
Can you show us? I've never seen that before.
I'm not taking it apart. I didn't
Okay.
bring the tools to do it. But there will be foam in it. It also has sound deadening foam in the bottom. And in a lot of these cases, if you don't have that foam in there, you'll get echoes and reverb and pinging and stuff like that. And so that's why they're put in there. Also makes it heavier. More heavy is more better, right?
I don't know. It sounds like you're 4 or 5 pounds short.
I mean, that's pretty stout for a 60% board.
Where's your go-to place for your secondary market? Sorry.
I try to avoid it because I despise the secondary market.
All right.
The only secondary market that I do is with the Utah Mechanical Keyboard Discord. I have been asked by the moderators, because I did ask them, I will give out invitations for anyone that wants to go to that. You have to be vetted by me. That means I really have to know you. They did not want me to wholesale say, here's a join link. It kind of spun out of our mechanical keyboard on Reddit. There's our mech market is a big place on Reddit for a lot of this stuff. I refuse to do anything on mech market, personally. It's a personal choice. So I'd rather, you know, deal with people that I can at least meet in person and, you know, do the sketchy drug deal in a parking lot, except it's
a keyboard.
Plastic or PCBs or metal cases.
What's the difference?
I don't know, sometimes drugs is cheaper.
Yeah, those are good, but yeah.
But what brings you longer lasting joy?
And
So,
Flip
what
the
about
coin.
Backlit keyboards.
you absolutely can do that. Some of these do them. Most of them do not, because I don't do a lot of that. I do have a few here that do. The clear case, longer board in front there has underglow.
Do you do perky RGB very
I
often?
very rarely do. If the PCB has it, great. I hate soldering surface mount LEDs, so I don't
It's
do
not
it.
fun.
No. There are kits certainly that can do it. The Helix supports it, and I got about 3 of the LEDs in, realized they were all backwards, and then said, screw it. Can't change this anymore. And some of these kits are like, you buy the kit and it's just, you have everything except switches and caps. And you can throw, and it's hot swap, so you can push the cap in, you can pull it out, and
Are any of these hot swap?
a lot of them.
Do you want to show us real quick?
Can you hand me that one there?
Because I know I built a keyboard and I made it hot swap, and it was a pain in the butt. I'm just wondering if yours is the same system or not.
Were you using the correct tool? Nope.
No.
No.
So with the correct tool, and let's give us some room to work here. Actually, I'll do that one because it's easier to get to. You can pretty easily pop the switch out.
Oh. What do they do on the PCB side?
So there's a socket that the pins go into, and it's just friction fit for the socket, and that's most of the
Gotta get the right tool. That'll do it.
Are the sockets something that you install on the PCB, or is the PCB just made in such a way that they're like plated
They're
or something?
both. So a lot of aftermarket or a lot of PCBs that are out there, here you go, they have all of the electronics are pre-soldered on. They're pick and placed, and so you don't have to do anything other than either put the switches in and solder them on, or put the switches in and their socket. They have the hot swap sockets in them, and there's a couple of types of hot swap sockets. You'll see the Kale is the most common one. Then you'll see Otemu. The problem with Otemu hot swap is you can only use Otemu switches because their switches are a little out of spec compared to everything else. Their stem is shorter. I have found one other brand that kind of works in an Otemu hot socket, and I wouldn't recommend it for anyone, so I'm not going to spill the tea on that one.
Oh, these would have been so much better.
I
use
another
those stupid
thing,
little silver things.
no-max sockets.
Yeah.
That's the way that you can make any board hot swap. So if you have a soldered board and you want to hot swap it, you can put these little sockets on the pins of the switch, place the switch in, solder the socket to the board, and then you can pull it
A
out.
pain in the butt.
Yes, it is. But
This is way better.
most of the solder kit type boards don't support the Kale footprint.
Oh.
And the Kale footprint also locks you into MX style switches only. On other boards you'll see Chalk is another style. The really super low profile one is Chalk switches or Alps footprints. And you can very easily make a PCB support all of those. If you're soldering it, you can't if you use the hot swap sockets. Layouts change. For a 60% board, there's like 9 different layouts that you can do, or more. You can get into split backspace, which I hate, or you can have win keyless, which I think is stupid because why remove functionality from something that you use?
Win keyless, is that?
No win key.
No win key, got it.
No OS key. And some people are like, I wasn't alive in the 80s, but we didn't have them back in the 80s, so why would I ever do this?
What do you call that style again?
Win keyless.
Win keyless.
Or WKL. 10 keyless, TKL. This is a 10 keyless board.
That's what TKL stands for.
So this is a standard like 104 layout minus the 10 key. So you have the nav cluster and arrow keys, but you don't have a 10 key on it. I brought exactly one board with a 10 key and it doesn't have an F row. There's hundreds of layouts, if not thousands. And some of these boards, because you're soldering the switches in, can support a whole host of layouts where if you have hot swap, you're stuck with whatever the layout the hot swap happens to be. Which, like, these boards all have kind of a funky layout because of that. This is the Pepsi Challenge boards that I want everyone to go through all of them so I can take a poll. Super scientific.
Admiral is asking, what's the name of the board with the most possible keys that you know of?
I don't know.
Like, it's like you've got your, what is it, the 104? That's got a lot of keys, right?
The Lisp Space Cadet keyboard.
Okay.
From the sale, I think, was where that was from. Has a very unique color scheme, which I really like, and I have a couple of sets of Space Cadet caps, but it has like a full-size keyboard, and then an F row, and then another F row, and a whole bunch of other keys, because it was for programming Lisp. And if you don't have 9 hands, you can't really use Lisp.
I'm glad I've never programmed Lisp.
Anyone do Lisp? Am I wrong?
You're not wrong.
That's as far as like a keyboard that exists out in the wild, commercial one, that's probably it. But I mean, people do stupid things all the time. I know somebody who just made a board that is 4 keys high and 30 across as a joke.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
What's the style that's opposite of QWERTY? It's like, what's the D?
Dvorak?
Yeah.
There's Dvorak and Colmac, and that's just the layout. I don't type in Dvorak or Colmac. I can only type in QWERTY. I can change layouts as far as ortholinear and staggered. I'm fairly bilingual as far as that's concerned. I am absolutely not when it comes to Ergo and then Dvorak or Colmac. And those layouts are designed for like RSI reduction, repetitive stress injury. They're theoretically easier on your wrists. I've been typing for 40 years. I don't care.
Do you usually use like a wrist rest when you have like those square? Like
No.
They're more flat instead of
I have one for my planks, which are this is the plank keyboard. I've had that because I used to keep this in my backpack when I would go places. I would keep a plank, and then I had a wrist rest for that matched it.
When you had not the fancy keycaps, though, right?
Oh, it wasn't this plank.
Okay.
I have like 5 planks. I don't have one of any of these.
Right, of course. Except probably this.
That's true.
And that.
Shut up. You're not helpful. Any other questions?
I really want to try those keyboards now.
Me too.
All right.
Let's
All right. So
let's
ground.
set them up here, maybe.
Feel free. Ground rules on the keyboards. Please sanitize your hands before you use them, and wipe them down when you're done. Let's just keep everyone healthy. keep those 5. So those the ones that these need
Yep.
to. These are the ones that I need input on them. Specifically, I want to know which ones that you like.
You have like a piece of paper. with, like,
There's
write
tape on
down
the back
which
with
one.
the number,
Yeah, they have numbers,
So-
and it's 1 through 5.
1 through 5.
You just try them.
Again,
Everyone
I've also
tally on which one.
I have a little bag of random ass switches. If you want to try these out, there's the switch tester. These are off limits, please. I'm gonna go talk to Sash because it's been a minute. And you. I did not expect. I wasn't here.